Well, I want to thank Brett and the Globecomm team for inviting me to sit on the panel and for their hospitality over the last couple of days. And so I wanted to really kind of go through our implementation of 4G and what we're doing. And it's really on the fixed wireless only. So when I hear Ryan talk about operating 4 different networks, 2G, 3G, and 2 4G networks, I'm a little bit envious of that. We've got a very simplistic network compared to his, where we've just got one slice of spectrum, 700 megahertz, and we're doing fixed wireless on it only. So Adams has been around as a telephone cooperative for 60-some years. We've been in the wireless industry really since early on, doing paging, IMTS, which is the original mobile telephone system, ITFS. That was mentioned this morning, and we were doing that off of a spectrum lease from the schools. The schools had access to certain portions of the ITFS spectrum. So in the early 90s, before DBS, direct broadcast satellite really came of age, we were offering 20 channels of wireless cable TV, and that was a very popular product for us. And then from 2001 till 2012, we had a 2G network, 2.5G, because it was operating edge data. We had 60-some sites, 10,000 subs, and then last year we sold our spectrum to U.S. Cellular. And then the bottom bullet point really is the one that's a good segue to our new product, which we've been in the fixed wireless internet using unlicensed spectrum really for the last 10 years as well. So that was really one of our most popular products even to this day, and our CFO tells us it's also one of our most profitable ventures as well. But as the unlicensed wireless technology really became mature and then and antiquated, we're facing several challenges. We were a victim of our own success. We had a ton of users attached to all these different sites, and so the lot of oversaturation and slow bandwidth, again, because of just the number of users that we were able to sell off a given sector. The spectrum is unlicensed, 900 megahertz, and it's prone to interference. We've got some really good war stories at Adams on baby monitors and cordless telephones causing interference with our base stations. So obviously moving to a licensed spectrum to protect that is very beneficial. We just had an incident last year where our sales director paid a resident $100 to give up their baby monitor so he could go buy a different frequency, because guess what? It was interfering. He lived right close to one of our base stations, so we've paid customers off, and I mean there's a half a dozen examples where we've done that as well. Another disadvantage is the vendor's equipment is proprietary, so the cost of the user gear is high. And so there really wasn't an ecosystem since it was proprietary too. And then, of course, it was just old generation, 10 years old. A lot of the backplanes was, shared across 200 users. You could only do 2 megabits through the backplane, and the average unlicensed wireless speed was probably 200 or 300K. And then at the same time, all these other mobile carriers were coming out with their own 3G and 4G product. So we've got lower C block, 700 megahertz. Second bullet point there is David Fritz, who we used to use as a consultant before he went to Alcatel-Lucent. He was talking about in the early auction in 2003, the FCC auction 49, that he was aware of people being able to buy CMA licenses for the price of a pickup. Well, we weren't able to buy our market area for the price of a pickup. So the analogy I use is we were able to pick it up for the price of a John Deere combine. And then Adams entered into the 2008 auction, and all those licenses went for 7 figures, and we were out after the first round of bidding. So that the first auction, is very beneficial from a price standpoint, but it's also not subject to any build-out requirements that a lot of the later auction winners have to do. So, the good news is we got it cheap. The bad news is we had to sit on it from 2003 until just last year, mainly due to the DTV transition, and not that it mattered anyway, because of an operator our size, we really didn't have many LTE options anyway. So, we bought on it, we sat on it, had to pay the government, at the time we bought it, and they used our money for the 6 or 8 years before we were able to use it. So we are an operator in Western Illinois. We bought 2 CMAs. I've got a map up there in a second we can look at. But we talked about this morning, the advantages of 700 megahertz spectrum. It's got great propagation coverage characteristics. When we operated our Symmetry cellular business, we were at 1.9 gig, and that was all about just limited coverage. And really with a 700, we've got customers today that are 9.5 miles from the cell site. So it's really about loading it up with capacity, and coverage is definitely not an issue with 700 megahertz. And of course, my baby monitor example there, when obviously using licensed spectrum, you're protected from that. And then the strong ecosystem. I think one of my surprises so far is there is not a lot of ecosystem at the user equipment yet. In fact, when we struck our deal with Globecomm a couple of years ago, really there was only one UE vendor that we're utilizing today. So I think the ecosystem will get there, but right now it seems to be a little bit more limited than I thought it would be. And so you see the Mississippi River snaking down the left-hand side of the map. We've got 2 CMAs, it's 20-some counties, and it's 401,000 licensed POPs. So we're using Globecomm. This slide came, I plagiarized it from a training session we did with our employees, so had to tell everybody where Long Island was at, and knew who Globecomm was. In fact, I still don't know how to say Hapag. Okay. Should have done that before the presentation. On the RAN side, we're doing Ericsson eNode Bs and band-rich on the user equipment. We're also looking at BEC very closely at this point. And then again, we're fixed wireless only, but I do think we're going to look at the USB modems, the dongles, and eventually introduce mobility into our network. So this is a diagram with Globecomm on the left-hand side, and then our own infrastructure on the right. I've got a couple other things that explain that maybe a little bit better. Really, we're one of the first providers, I think, to use, I'm still calling it a hosted hybrid model, where the CPG is located at our facility. That was a huge advantage for us. Because we're already an ISP and we've got 2 gigabits of bandwidth up to the upstream providers. And so instead of backhauling all that to Globecomm, the CPG gives us the ability to offload all that traffic. So even though it's a Globecomm product, we have a CPG that's located in Quincy, Illinois at our data center. And again, it reduces our operating expenses tremendously. And in fact, between the eNode Bs and the CPG back to Globecomm's core, we're doing that over the open internet. IP, in my opinion, is more robust than even a lot of the TDM that's out there today. So any registration of the device, any signaling that goes on, is done over the open internet, and so we really have no backhaul cost to Globecomm. So for a small carrier with us, I think there was a slide this morning saying there's 100 million connected devices. Currently we have 473 of those connected devices out there, and so cheap backhaul is important to us. This is an example of the band-rich router that we're using. Again, we're also looking very closely at BEC, and then I think there's a third vendor out there, AccessTel, that will also have a fixed device solution probably this fall. Okay, so for us, how we got there to the pre-launch phase, our challenges before then, is we're really the first one, I think, to deploy with Globecomm and their CPG product. On the RAN side, long lead times for the eNode Bs. For a small company like us, and Ryan could probably attest to this, we pride ourselves on being very flexible and quick to market. And so when you're, when you have to wait 6 to 9 months to deploy a cell site, that may be more typical in the larger environment. For us, that's a long time for make a decision and then roll it out and launch it. And then again, I mentioned the UE, the limited number of choices for fixed wireless right now. Also designing a package for our customers, our wireless customers, for pricing and data cap. So we've done fixed wireless for 10 years. We've never had a data cap until now. So it was a real challenge for us internally to discuss what the best package was. And again, going back to some comments early this morning, we're not doing 2 gigs or 4 gigs. If everybody's doing streaming video, you're going to have to really increase your caps. In fact, we start ours at 15. Our standard one is 30 gigabytes. And we have them all the way up, I think, to 200 right now. So we've really tried to concentrate on what the best package size is. And then another interesting discussion that we always have at Adams is when to call, when is enough for system utilization? How many customers can we add to a site in a sector? What are the download and upload speeds that keep us comparable with the competition, but also without wrecking the network? And then again, with 700 propagation, how far out can we add customers? We're doing a few hundred customers that are in between 7 and 9 miles with a fixed Yagi antenna. And then this is one of the things that Brett and I were talking about a few weeks ago is when the system's live, what resources are available to us to be able to operate our network and grow our network. And really, I think there's 2 key tools that's provided with our overall solution with Globecomm. So we use their Telsosoft OSS for alarm and performance KPIs. I've got one slide showing an example of that. And then the deep packet inspection is probably our single most important tool for really just monitoring the network. We use it for traffic shaping and policing, and then we also use it just to understand what the customers are doing, to our network. And after we've gone live, what are the customers doing on our network? Well, guess what? Video streaming is by far the leading user of bandwidth. You'll see this is a one-day snapshot of about 450 customers on the network. YouTube, 81 gig. Netflixing, 24. Xbox, so on and so forth. And so it's unbelievable. We had heard a year ago, we were guessing that 50% of the traffic would be video streaming. I really think it's closer to 75%. Not only because those applications are popular, but also, of course, because they take up, a ton of bandwidth. And this is a snapshot straight off the Procera DPI tool, by the way. One of the things we've really been fighting with is these video streaming providers are really good with these adaptive streaming protocols, and they're really hard to enforce. When we first started playing with our DPI, and Gopi and Nardine helped us out and continue to help us out, is if you let Netflix stream how they want to stream, and you keep user equipment wide open and don't limit the speeds, they'll push about 14 mega traffic down to the device and to your cache, and then let the and then based upon that, they'll limit that. So if you're watching the DPI, you'll see a Netflix movie stream about 14 megabits a second, and then once it catches up, it'll stream to 1 or 2 megabits, and then you'll watch the DPI and it'll go up to 6 or 8 megabits. So they're always trying to get ahead of the any potential restriction in the network. And one of the things we did is we tried to limit Netflix and really all video services to a certain speed. But these adaptive streaming protocols are really interesting, because if you limit, again, I'll just use Netflix as the example, them to like 4 megabits per second, within a couple of minutes, they can understand that you're trying to limit one protocol, and they can deliver it through, in the case we were looking at, was HTTP traffic. So you try to limit their main protocol to 4 megabits, and within a couple of minutes, again, they're delivering that same video stream over HTTPD and back up to 14 megabits. So we spent a lot of time on trying to make sure that that these video streaming vendors are really trying to really want to make that an efficient use of our wireless network. So that's been a big challenge. And then I think there's a couple other wireless service providers in our area that are actually limiting Netflix to standard definition. We let them have an HD stream, which is about 4 megabytes. But you look at all the technologies coming down the road as far as Ultra HD and 3D and whatever. We're just really interested in with wireless being a finite resource. When can a wireless network, or at least the one that Adams intends to deploy, when is enough? So not only is video the number one user of bandwidth on our network, another thing we're finding is our customers love the ability of what 4G can do, to the ability to download a lot of data. So again, this is a snapshot from August the 1st, and we've got one customer that did 29 gigabits of traffic. That's in one day. And then you've got everybody else. These are the top 10 users. What's neat about the DPI is you can really get granular. I think it's one of the third or fourth users. I was drilling down to him. I don't have any screenshots on that, but he's a big MLB.TV fan, and not only can you tell that he was streaming off MLB TV, you can go down even at a more granular basis and figure out what games he was watching. In this case, he's in Quincy, Illinois, and he was watching a lot of Cincinnati Reds games. And so that just kind of shows you the power of the DPI and how it really helps you understand, customer habits.
Before you switch, the blue is uplink, right?
The blue is uplink.
Notice those guys are also uplink abusers.
Yeah.
And
Can you grab a mic, please? Grab a mic.
Nobody else is using uplink at all, basically.
Right. I mean, it's much more than 10 to 1. It's usually 20 to 1.
Right. But my point is, whoever these guys are, they've also got upstream activity going on, so they're not just watching something. We don't know exactly unless your DPI's aware of what they're doing. It's way more than VoIP. Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And
it's not just Facebook.
And we market to a lot of businesses too. So it could be that most of that the strong uplink users are indeed smaller medium businesses. Another interesting observation and really a challenge for us is the way our RAN vendor sells us that they've got a licensing component that on the number of connected users, and we were kind of basing our model on 250 users per site, or roughly 80 per sector, but of the 250, only half of those would be active during the busy hour. Well, instead of 50%, what we're finding is it's 100%, or at least 95%. So the fourth one down, South Quincy, we've got 175 peak UEs in the connected mode during the busy hour. Guess how many customers we show on that site? It's between 175 or 180. So there's so many applications behind the band-rich device that are keeping the connections open. So we're estimating behind the band-rich device there's anywhere from 3 to 5 devices. By some estimates, that's even conservative. So usually there's a laptop in the house. It's either a hardwired PC, desktop, or it's actually a laptop. There's one gaming platform. There's 1 to 2 tablets. There's 1 to 2 handheld devices, either a smartphone or an iPod. All those are always constantly pinging the network for weather updates, sports updates or whatever. And another facet of the DPI reporting is that this is a single user, and these are the just the number of TCP connections he's got open. The point is, each one of these, in just a matter of a few seconds, will constantly be pinging the network. So you really have to pay attention to, so for us, we're going back to our RAN vendor and having to buy a few more connected to user license, and because there's, it's an always on, constant connection, and there's so many apps behind the device that it's really amazing. That's probably one of the design components. That's really what caught us surprised, is that every device is attached during the busy hour. And then real quickly, and I guess in conclusion, we're doing external antennas for 90% of our installs. One of the main reasons for that is we're doing a lot of technology migration at Adams. So we're actually using this 4G product to replace a wired broadband solution that we've had in our ILEC area for about 10 years. It's an old SHDSL protocol where 4 users share 1.5 meg of bandwidth. So it's kind of ironic that, again, in small Adams telephone, we're replacing our wired broadband product with a wireless replacement technology. So really, we've got several hundred of these users that require external antennas because they're very long loops. They're roughly 7 to 9 miles. And another thing that we've done is we've actually used the band-rich UE as more of a front end or air interface. We keep the existing customer router, which is usually a Wi-Fi router, in place, and we just tie the two of them together with an Ethernet cable. And then that allows the technician doing the truck roll, they don't have to go in and change all the Wi-Fi devices behind everything, but behind the existing router. So we're actually doing a pretty unique application where we're tying 2 devices together. And then really what we're finding also is wireless is a finite resource. I think the fact that we've only got a single C block, 5 up and 5 down, we're especially limited. It's one of the questions I've got, for Kerry and the 600 megahertz auction that's coming down the road, is if they can parse that out in bigger chunks, because 5 up and 5 down with no other spectrum assets that we've got, it's pretty limited right now for us, especially with our plan to allow as much video streaming service on our network, as the network itself will permit. And then another thing, we depending on the time of day, downlink and uplink speeds vary greatly, and a lot of that's just an example of how much traffic is on the network. And then still, and our experience with Globecomm has been very positive. This initial trial that we're doing with these 475 customers has been very, very positive. Even if they complain about varying speeds, to the majority of our customers, they came from an old technology that was only allowing a couple of 100K per second. Now they're getting 8 megabytes per second, and to them, that is such a positive experience, and then that also allows Adams to grow its network and gain more revenue. So overall, it's been a very positive thing.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah. So why are you only a fixed LTE provider?
So again, a subsidiary of ours, Adams Telecom, owned Symmetry Wireless. We ceased operations after we sold our spectrum to US Cellular about 14 months ago. So we really had no other assets to launch, true mobility type service. So we had no other fallback. So our only spectrum asset was 700, and for a small player like us, even though with Globecomm, you can do VoLTE, and that's the road they want to head down. But for us,
So you're saying you're not doing voice is basically
we're not
the
doing
answer.
voice. We
Okay.
are testing voice over the top, just using our internal soft switch that we've got there. But just by the nature of our limited spectrum, that was really our only.
So you don't think there's a market for mobile broadband as opposed to having a voice anchor?
Now, do you mean mobility as being
So you got
handset and
dongles.
smart?
Everybody has MiFis and dongles that would allow you to support mobile data, mobile broadband customers wherever they are, not just at their house where you have a fixed location, you know where they are, but having people who want to use their service wherever they are in your coverage area.
I think we'll get there. I think part of the challenges is still the limited ecosystem, and plus I showed a picture of the band-rich router. Their dongle that they offer is it's probably 30% more expensive than their UE, their fixed device too. So even introducing mobility onto the network, even if it's an option, Adams has about 7,500 broadband customers. So we've got an opportunity, in my opinion, to sell mobility service, even if it's within our own network, to those 7,500 customers. But we're still early in. We're still calling this the pilot project. I'm working with Ken and Brett on the aspects of the pilot project. So this is like our first significant step into the market, and I think eventually we'll get there with mobility. And I think a year or two down the road, we're going to look at all of our options to best utilize the spectrum.
Okay, so Chariton Valley Wireless. We'll talk a little bit about what we do. And Tim, if you'd be more than happy to run that for me. Chariton Valley Wireless, we actually started out as Chariton Valley Cellular in April of 1991. We were a charter member for RCA, which is now CCA. We had amps back in 93, and in 1998 we changed our name to Chariton Valley Wireless. In 99 we rolled out TDMA. 05 we rolled out GSM. In 2012, we launched fixed wireless for CDMA, and we went live with a mobile product for CDMA on the 16th of July 2012. 2 months later, we launched a 4G network, and we're currently testing our what we call our CV4G network, which is to go commercially live third quarter of this year. So some other information about our organization. We've pretty much been in a hosting arrangement from the get-go. We hosted with a company called Midmo Cellular for amps. We did have a little stint where we had a 5E switch. It was called an ECP switch that we did a little bit of our TDMA switching. We did have Ericsson host us back in the day. We were with Perio Solutions at one time. And I've told this story to Brett. We were at RCA one year, and my general manager said, "Let's go talk to Globecomm." And I'm like, "Who the hell is that?" I didn't want to change, but in the end, we ended up changing to Globecomm. And the reason why we went with Globecomm is because they could provide us with GSM, CDMA, and 4G down the road as well. So we made a decision back in 2011 that we were going to go all in on wireless. We're an ILEC and a CLEC. We're our ISP, local landline service. We do IPTV and we do wireless. So I went through it. We deployed a 3G. We signed up as a Verizon LRA participant, and we are working on deploying our. We talk about the reason why we went hosted versus buying our own core. Obviously, some advantages were some lower cap and OpEx, the switch is off-site, and I just can't find some talent in North Central Missouri to operate a switch. So, some, disadvantages, additional staff required. There's a limited talent pool, a large backhaul pipe needed, and, Globecomm takes care of all the software upgrades. So when we talk about deploying a network, I have a very good project manager that works for me. I know it's kind of misleading, my title. It's actually Director of Sales and Marketing, and I have all of the wireless underneath my umbrella. But I have a project manager that works for me, and she manages all projects across the company, not just wireless, but for our ILEC and our CLEC as well. But it was very important that when we went down the CMA path that we were going to be reaching out to the OEM vendors that we really hadn't contacted before because we needed to write a PRI for our phones. So we had to contact Motorola, Samsung, LG, HTC, and Bandrich. And when you're a little guy, getting a hold of these people is not easy. So they kind of brush you off. But we were successful in writing a PRI, which is specifically how the configuration for a CDMA phone. And we had to learn how to write that. And then we also had to write a preferred roaming list, which is a PRL, which puts the order of the roaming partners in order for the phone. Some of the other challenges we had, we were deploying the 3G network at the same time. We were also building a 4G network, and I've got some network pictures I'll show you. So for the entire year of 2012, I didn't take a vacation because I was so involved in the project. We were a GSM provider before, but we had to learn how to use card admin from Gemalto. And then being an LRA participant, our phones had to fall back from 4G LTE to 3G, which we learned about the CSIM portion of the SIM card. I did put some marketing stuff in here to kind of show you what we do, but we do a lot of direct mail. We do bundle high-speed internet and phone together. And when we, you can go to the next one, Tim. When we actually bundle this, we get really good results from this direct mail piece. Our stores get very busy, and the salespeople like the attention they get. A billboard, we put this billboard up in one of our markets, and the customer just went crazy. We offered an introductory price and $19.95 for the first 3 months, and after that it went up to the $49.95. We went out to, I spent Saturdays and Sundays sticking up yard signs. Actually stuck them in one of our ILEC, another cooperative, and kind of got a call back on that. So have to watch what we do there. Our network. The other thing is when we were GSM, all of our BSC, we have a Nokia BSC and we had an Ericsson BSC, but all of our equipment was in the shelter below the site. So when we look at our market, we have 45 sites up in what's our Mo5 market. We have GSM deployed on 42 of those 45. We have CDMA deployed on 45 of the 45. We have one of those 45 that's running 1900 as a license saver. And then our LRA is on 45 of our 45 sites. And our lower CV 4G is on 4 of those sites right now. And we own all of the towers but one of these. So when we decided we were going to deploy our 4G network, we have 24 megahertz of BNC license. We selected 4 towns to do it. This was strategic for us because we were going to go after some competitors in the market, and we selected these 4 towns. and we were going to market them with high-speed wireless internet. So our cell sites, you can see 31 of them use fiber optics, which is our own fiber optics network. 12 of them use microwave, and 2 of them we use copper. Obviously, we have our sites backed up to a generator, 36 of our 45 cell sites. You can see here our network. This is kind of the way our network's made up. We have a Cisco ME3400 switch that backhauls our 3G and 4G traffic back to our network operations center. And you can see the LRA eNode B, and then our lower CB eNode B. That on the right was what I just showed you. That on the left handles all the GSM. So it's rather large. We also decided when we were going to deploy a 3G network that we were going to go with tower top radios, which scared the hell out of our wireless network manager. It was a decision we made. We didn't have a tower climber at all, but you can see here that this is the configuration of our network prior to our launch of our 4G network. We have CDMA, we have LRA, and we have GSM. You can see the tower top radios there at the top. And when you go to the next slide, we changed out the antennas to a dual pole 850, and we put up an antenna for our lower 700. At the same time, when we do that, we put up additional three more radios at the top. So this is just some pictures of the top of our towers that are taken. This is a outdoor lightning protection unit that we use that was placed at the top of the tower. And we use a power fiber cable up the tower. That's an Ericsson eNode B. And then we take these pictures just obviously for quality check to make sure that the tower technicians are doing their job and everything's weatherproofed. This is actually a look at one of our towers. You can see that the bottom radios are our CDMA network, and the top radios are our 4G network. If we have a site such as this that requires lower 700, there'll be 3 more additional radios. So it gets pretty busy up top. This is just another look at it. So we, we've been pretty busy as a company because we did install, we do have 4 networks that we currently, have up online every day, and our lower 700 is exactly, we have the same setup as Adam's telephone, where we're going after a fixed wireless, same CPG. Comes right back to Globecomm. We're an ISP, so we dump it out our ISP pipe locally from the CPG. But we have the same, basically the same network, same RAN. We're the same as Adams in our lower.
So again, we have a chance for some Q&A. I'm going to try and prime the pump here, so I'm relying on you to come behind me, okay? I want to think about how you develop networks over time. I'm going to throw things into 2 categories and tell me if it applies to you at all, okay? One I will describe as an overlay strategy, and the other I will describe as a, I'll use the Sprint term, network vision strategy, where you look back and you say, well, the old equipment I have supporting these previous networks is power consuming, is sitting on taking a lot of real estate, and I could shrink it down to a much more manageable footprint. Do you ever think about the replacement versus overlay and how that trade-off would look? As you build your new network, do you look back and say, let me replace the networks I had, particularly since there are multi-mode base stations now that could easily allow you to just use a shelf, right? Just use a...
There are. We actually have some multi-mode BBCs or BBUs in our network. But when we look at our legacy systems, for example, like GSM, this was a conversation we've had with Globecomm as to when do we pull the plug on our GSM network. And Quite frankly, it's hard for us to pull the plug on GSM right now because AT&T only has 4 towers in our market, so they rely on us for GSM coverage. Until that coverage becomes or the revenue becomes dried up, we'll continue to operate our GSM network as we do. We just continue to take carriers away from it to add them to the CDMA, the network. But we constantly are looking at our network to see where we can improve it. We're constantly drive testing our network to see where we can make improvements in the network. But most certainly, I mean, I'm concerned about, you seeing the tower. I think Carrie asked this morning how many people named their spectrum, and I think everybody else stopped, and I kept mentioning stuff because as we have some spectrum, we'd sell them for some John Deere combines, but it has to be a lot of them. The other thing is we have AWS spectrum. So this morning's panel, when we're talking about capacity, if capacity becomes an issue for us, I can put up AWS in those 4 towns, and I've just provided myself with additional capacity. Now, if I tell my wireless network manager that, he's going to say, well, where am I going to put it? And I really don't know, and that's not my problem. That's his.
What percentage of your revenues come from customers that are your subscribers versus roaming subscribers?
Well, for us, a huge portion of our revenue comes from roamer right now. So
More than half.
More than half.
More than half, right?
More than half, which is scary.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Ours is about 55%.
Yeah, it's more than half.
But what we're doing with that in mind, we have grown. We have our revenue's been growing and growing and growing because of the fixed wireless product, and because we're very aware that at some point the revenue may go away, especially from AT&T.
And do you have a ratio like that?
Well, again, with our play being very limited compared to Chariton Valley's, we don't have any roaming traffic. That's something we're looking at closely, since really the spectrum that we own in our area is what AT&T would be using to roll out in lower C. So that's one of our real key strategies down the road. Is really looking at the roaming piece very closely, because a lot of people that we talk to just expect for AT&T to come to us at some point with some sort of RAN sharing agreement or spectrum sharing agreement, since we kind of took the lower C away from them on our side of the river. Ryan's on the western side of the Mississippi, and we're on the eastern.
But it doesn't necessarily have to wait until they come to you, right?
No, you can reach out to them.
Or more importantly, you can just build out and be ready to take their roaming traffic, right?
Provided they'll talk to you.
Exactly.
Right. Yep. And I know, Carrie speaks a lot of that at the RTG things that we've got some visibility to, and that's one of the key things that we're trying to keep our eyes on.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we're also doing with our lower 700 is in these 4 towns that I showed up there, we're actually doing an edge out. So we're actually going out and we're going to select these towns. The device we're using is similar to Tim's, where we can actually home that device back to our Metaswitch, and we can provide our customers with voice. But more importantly, the biggest market that I see for this particular application is we sell a lot of hosted PBX. So we can go into some of our smaller towns and offers these customers a hosted PBX solution off of our Metaswitch, and really go after the business customers. Yeah, I'm cherry picking, but that's exactly what I want to do. Because those business customers are going to use that network during the day when usage demand is lower than the evening. And it's the same thing on our ISP. When you think about our ISP, there's peaks and valleys. And as marketers, I have to figure out how to sell that valley. And, we're looking at doing time of day where from 8 to 5 for a business will double your speed. Sure. We're not out any additional cost. We're still paying for the bandwidth, so how can we generate additional revenue?
You guys cover any shopping malls?
Currently, we don't. With our next phase of deployment with Ericsson, we'll be launching a site right next to the Quincy Mall, which is kind of the center of the market area, and again on our side of the river. So we're right there.
And are you looking to serve them with macro or small cells?
Really, everything we've done with Ericsson up to this point has been macro cell. We did have their team in on March the 1st, and I know they're rolling out some micro cell stuff third and fourth quarter of this year, and we don't want to be leading edge or bleeding edge, but I think small cell strategy, Wi-Fi offload, all that's gonna really play into our strategy, especially being a CLEC, and this is where Ryan and I have some, commonalities. When you're an ILEC and a CLEC, and you've got a lot of the infrastructure to even provide, backhaul to your own wireless towers, I think that's a real key asset.
Sure.
And I was at a vendor meeting last year, and the CEO talked about something, how the future is all about wireless, but it's really about the fiber or backhaul infrastructure to get to those wireless sites. And his definition of the future was more and more it'll be defined on a smaller number of users per antenna. And I think that's where Wi-Fi really fits in. So at a macro cell level, we're planning on 250 users per site. You get down to a small cell that might be 40 or 50 users per site, and you get down to a Wi-Fi model where you're talking about a dozen or so users less. So for us deploying and using our own infrastructure assets, I think we're really keen to the model of a small selling, because in our market areas, we're going to be the backhaul. One company is going to be feeding one subsidiary of Adams is going to be benefiting the other, and vice versa.
Does that apply to you at all?
We really don't have any shopping malls in our area.
Well, I only chose shopping malls as an example of a venue which aggregates a lot of people at one place, and shops and whatever. Could be,
Yeah, it's
big
applicable
high
to
school.
us.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Could be something that requires a different approach to coverage that you don't provide today. That your macros aren't the right
We've
model.
looked at, actually, we have 3 pico cells that we have that we're playing around with to see if we could use them in that type of application. So
Office park, could be anything.
right.
I don't really want to dictate it. I'm just trying to throw out examples of where small cells might be applicable. And I'm also trying to segue to Andy here so that we have something in common to talk about. But I guess the last point is looking forward, if the next wave of spectrum does create opportunity, how do you see yourselves participating? Are you going to go solo? Is there a way to pool resources? Is there a way to create a more regional approach?
Once we sell our other 700 to him, we'll have a lot of money.
Thanks, Ryan. We'll be following up with the conversation. The John Deere combine analogy really took hold.
Well, I mean, it could be, a 7-player deal that moves some guys from, free agents from one team to the other, too, If you can't use your assets, you may as well give them to somebody else who's in the independent race.
We actually, we own quite a bit of spectrum because we wanted to keep the big guys out of our market. So we paid dearly for the 700 we bought on the last one. So we'll analyze what spectrum we need, and I'm sure we'll participate in the next auction to keep AT&T and Verizon out. I mean, it's a must for us.
And that's really going to be a way for a lot of us smaller carriers to be able to buy into the market, is collectively and just not individually too. So I think just the examples that I gave previously, where 10 years ago 700 megahertz went for X, and then the later auction went for, this
Oh,
much.
yeah.
It's Spectrum's definitely at a premium, and we can only wonder what a 600 megahertz Spectrum auction's gonna bring revenue wise. So as a small company like Adam's gonna be able to to afford 400,000 covered POP Spectrum license, where really our center of interest is only 3 or 4 counties. The only way we're going to be able to do that is collaborate with our fellow companies.
But even there, so far, you've allowed Verizon to own the spectrum, and then you are part of their program, right?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, you are. So in a way, you don't mind yielding.
We'll yield to a certain point to get what we need. And the biggest reason why we joined the LRA program was purely because we could get into a 4G arena and we could offer our customers a 4G product nationwide immediately. But also, I knew that even though moving from GSM to CDMA is not a popular move, because you made the comment the CDMA is kind of dead. For us to be able to think, it's not growing.
It's not going down.
But for us to be able to get the devices we needed, it was a must for us to go that route. There's no way that I would have been able to negotiate the iPhone deal with Apple if I hadn't went CDMA. And on March 15th we launched the iPhone, so it was critical for us to move that way. Right now things are going great. It's a long-term deal and things are going great. So we're happy that we got into it. We're finding out they're a good partner to work with right now, and I hope it stays that way. So.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, you're kind of a role model for them. So they need somebody to be out talking favorably about their program, and you're doing a pretty good job of that, right?
Yeah.
Good. All right, perfect. Last call. Anybody have a question?
Yes.
Cool. Let's go. Thank you, guys.